Hey, what's up folks, my name's Gray, you're watching Consoletronics, where I once again rummage through the history of a British developer, but this time, there's a twist. They're still going. Although now owned by EA, who are laying people off like it's going out of fashion, they probably won't be around much longer. But the glass is never half empty here at Consoletronics, and today I take you on a tour from the 8-bit micro scene of the 1980s to the multi-billion-dollar industry that gaming is today, with my look at the best and worst Codemasters games.
Welcome to Robin Hood. Good luck, Robin.
Although Codemasters founders, the Darling brothers, Richard and David, had produced a number of games before, usually distributed by Budget Kings and later the official distributor of Sega in Europe, Mastertronics, the second title released by Codemasters in 1986 was in fact developed by another bedroom programming pair, the Oliver twins, who were only 18 when this game was released, but already had close to a dozen game credits under their belts. This was a big hit when released initially for the Amstrad, and would pave the way to turning this new software house into a force on the British computer scene and beyond.
Tough luck, Robin Hood.
As 1987 dawned, Codemasters would crank up the releases, bringing in a number of young, talented developers to produce the software as they focused on distribution. But it would be the Oliver twins who set the pace, producing a succession of chart toppers while still keeping the $2.99 budget price. Ghost Hunters would be the first, but unlike Super Robin Hood on which it's based, I can't figure out what to do or where to go to make progress. But hey, that's the story of my life.
Three, two, one, go!
I skimmed over the first Darling Brothers release, BMX Simulator. But well, this one has to be included. This is the first racing game that Codemasters would produce. A piece of history for a company that would in time become synonymous with the driving game. Looks like it would be a laugh. I wouldn't know. I can't even use keys to play it. Still in 1987, the Oliver twins would craft the game for which they'll always be remembered, Dizzy. I'm not joking, this was like our Mario Brothers, a tricky puzzle platformer that you could pick up with your pocket money. Many sequels and spin-offs would be released, but I won't be looking at them here as I have a Dizzy special episode in the works. Look forward to it. Another driving game, of sorts. This time we enter some post-apocalyptic silliness, where you drive your motorbike around looking for bombs to defuse and electric fences to deactivate. This one actually surprised me as I found myself enjoying the simplicity of it all, even if 3/4 of the screen is taken up by your bloody handlebars.
A rock star ate my hamster.
For any of you slightly confused about the title of this game, it's taken from one of the most famous British newspaper headlines of the 1980s. Freddie Starr ate my hamster. And like the joke headline that inspired it, this spoof music industry sim parodies the pop music biz, with characters like Wacko Jacko and By George, who I've teamed up to storm the charts with. Very silly, but that's the point. I'd never heard of this single-screen platform puzzle 'em up from 1991, so I thought it would be some low-hanging fruit to take the piss out of before we begin the journey through Codemasters' console phase. But paddle my posterior, this game's been on my mind for a while now. The puzzles are fiendish, but the simple yet expressive graphics have a disarming charm. And for a late specky game, the animation is top notch, excellent stuff. Like many other British developers, Codemasters could see the home computer market was shrinking and consoles were the future of gaming. The problem was that unlike cassettes or any other storage medium, you had to pay the likes of Nintendo and Sega to produce the cartridges for your games. So Codemasters decided, sod all that, and manufactured their own, releasing a string of unlicensed titles, starting with this one, Firehawk. I always thought it a Choplifter clone, but it plays a bit more like Desert Strike. Basic stuff, but very playable. To see Dizzy and his yokefolk chums running about on 8 and 16-bit consoles and the Game on Store shelves alongside Mario and Sonic was enough to bring a tear to the eye of many a gamer raised on Spectrum and Amstrad. While a great game that stays true to the Dizzy puzzlers of old, I always felt on playing this that it just lacked a certain something to really appeal to the many unfamiliar with the series. What can I say about this one? It seemed to come from nowhere but quickly became the game everyone wanted to play. The fact that it was unlicensed must have royally cheesed off Nintendo, but none of us cared about that. The original toy line of the late 80s was created by Galoob, who together with Codemasters in 1990 released the Game Genie, a device that let you enter all sorts of cheats in your games. Nintendo sued, and Galoob won the case, legitimizing the increasing unlicensed games available, making Nintendo look less like the gamer's friend and more like men in suits trying to ruin our fun. I hope you're paying close attention, Sony. This is why I love doing these sorts of videos, because it forces me out of my comfort zone of weird Japanese console games and makes me play old computer games that I've never heard of. Like this one, Steg the Slug, and I've been playing it a lot. It's another puzzle game, but this time in a more Lemmings inspired fashion, as you have to rescue a certain amount of slug larvae by blowing bubbles and floating them to safety, making sure to clear the path of obstacles as you go. Simple but bloody addictive. Try it yourselves. This may be one of the best games you've never played. Having been thoroughly impressed with the lineup of titles so far, we come to our first lackluster effort, Captain Dynamo, a pretty simple platformer that apparently was also at one point being ported to the Mega Drive. And for the life of me, I can't think why. It's certainly not one of Codemasters' best from this period, and while certainly not terrible, there were so many platformers knocking about in the early 90s that you needed to be something special to stand out, and that's where Captain Dynamo falls flat. Okay, Most of you have probably heard of this one, but what you might not know, because I certainly didn't, is that this is the third game in a series. The first game, Linus Spacehead, was released on the Quattro Adventure cartridge for the NES. Unlicensed, of course, but a standalone sequel called Linus Spacehead's Cosmic Crusade came out in '92 before the 16-bit entry Cosmic Spacehead. A point-and-click adventure with some platforming thrown in for good measure. Decent game. For those of you wondering how I choose which games to look at and which to ignore, don't worry, I too am clueless. Here's another unlicensed 8-bit Nintendo title I have never heard of. B-52, a US exclusive this time. Sting ants and collect honey in a pretty limp insect-themed game that certainly had potential. You'll never guess what I'm about to say if I gave you a dozen tries. But I've never played this game, although at this point you must be wondering if I've ever played a video game at all. But while I'm sure this Sampras endorsed game plays a fine round of tennis, what's much more interesting to me is the fact that this game introduced the J-Cart. 2 extra controller ports built into the cartridge, making it 4-player without the need for any extra adapter. Something I would make full use of in the Mega Drive sequels to Micro Machines. First of all, R.I.P. Colin McRae. Now I might know next to nothing about rallying, but I know a good game when I see it. Codemasters were actually pretty late to the 32-bit party, their first PlayStation and Saturn releases being another Micro Machines sequel and a Jonah Loma rugby game. But they would start 1998 strongly with this excellent rally sim that for a long time was the definitive rally game on the market. It wasn't just Colin McRae and rallying, but the British touring car scene was at its height in the 90s and would be immortalised by a fantastic series of racing games starting on the PS1 and PC until dwindling away on the Xbox and PS2. But at its best, it was compared to Gran Turismo as one of the best in class. I guess by 2000 there was little interest in the tiny toy car market, but Codemasters on a roll, pun intended, when it came to driving games, weren't ready to give up the diminutive racing genre, so brought to us Micromaniacs. This time it's on foot, and don't ask me how, they made it work. Oh, brother. I might be out my depth when it comes to racing games, but boxing is my passion, and as a big fan of featherweight champ Nazim Hamed throughout the 90s, I was pretty excited by this release. And, well, this video isn't called the best and worst for nothing. I may have bounced off B-52 and Captain Dynamo, but this steaming atrocity takes home the prize as being one of the worst games I've ever played. Driving games are one thing, but if Codemasters wanted to survive in the PS2 era, they needed games with real meat on the bones. Enter Second Sight, developed by another British developer of note, Free Radical Design, who also brought to us the excellent Time Splitters and the anything but excellent Haze. Second Sight was a big hit when released in 2004, I seem to recall. I remember enjoying it a few years later when finally getting through the backlog. We've always wanted to be the baddie in games for once. Or is that just me? Well, in 2007, Codemasters would grant our wish with Overlord, in a game that's easily more fun than Fable, as you summon your goblin minions on your path to conquest, in a surprisingly addictive fantasy quest that was very popular for a while, and got a few spin-offs and a sequel, but I only ever played the first game. Good stuff. While Nazim Hamid on PS1 is irredeemable rubbish, the many faults that plague Clive Barker's Jericho frustrate you more because this game had real potential. A co-op first-person shooter with little in the way of co-op. But it's the horror aesthetic that's the selling point, and that's actually pretty good. But the gameplay is sadly lacking. What's that smell? Ah, it's the piece of shit you see on screen. This is Turning Point Fall of Liberty, a what if the Nazis won the Second World War first-person shooter that's catastrophically bad from start to finish. A shocking release at a time when even great shooters struggled for market share. This crap, however, is best left forgotten. Well, after one disappointment after the other from Jericho to Turning Point, Codemasters would instead handle development themselves and craft a very playable, if a tad seen it all before FPS that actually I quite enjoyed. Not for long, has to be said, but it kept me quiet for a bit. Good stuff, but too little, too late. And here, dear viewer, is where we wrap up proceedings, as in 2011 Codemasters won the F1 license and have been making annual installments since. And besides a few grid games, this is what they've been reduced to, a subsidiary of EA since 2020 with one job. So on that depressing note, let's at least console ourselves with the great games they left behind. I for one am itching to get back to Steg the Slug and maybe a bit of Slightly Magic. So thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed. More videos coming your way soon, so stay tuned. And goodbye.